I will just go ahead and kick us off. So again, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Callie Mason. I am the Vice President of Grants here at Project Lead the Way. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. We are going to be recording this session today, and we'll send out a recording afterward. So in case you feel like you missed something or have to hop early. Also, we ask that everybody stay on mute throughout the presentation. That will be really helpful. So if you're not on mute, I would ask that you go ahead and hit that mute button. And then the other thing is that we want to take questions throughout this little presentation, and we'll have time for questions at the end as well. So as you have a question, we say something, it sparks something for you, go ahead and send that over to us in the chat. We'll try to address it as they come up. And so with that, just a little bit about agenda of what we're going to go over today. We are going to talk a little bit about who Project Lead the Way is. We're going to talk about our programming, what it can look like in schools, and then we'll talk about the grant opportunities that are available to help you bring Project Lead the Way to your school, or if you're an existing Project Lead the Way program, how you can help use grant funding to expand that program. So we'll go ahead, and before we dive too far into the grant details and Project Lead the Way programming information, I would like to take a moment and to say thank you to Burns and McDonnell. They are the company who is making these grants possible. We are a partner of theirs, and they have made funding available for these school grants. If you don't know much about Burns and McDonnell, I'd like to just share a little bit. They are a family of 100% employee-owned companies of engineers, construction and craft professionals, architects, planners, and scientists. And they really are a very large company that builds our critical infrastructure. They are a multinational company, but they have offices all across the country. And they're in services, or they're in industries like aviation, commercial, renewables, power, oil and gas, manufacturing, transportation, telecommunications. So imagine they work on projects as large as huge sports stadiums to building aviation manufacturing plants for companies like Rolls-Royce, to installing solar arrays, power stations. So they have their hands in quite a few different things. And they are just as excited as we are here at Project Lead the Way about getting students interested in STEM subjects. They are really excited to partner with us in that way to help bring the Project Lead the Way programming and the STEM subjects into your schools, and to help students really develop those in-demand transportable skills to help address some of the real-world challenges that they are solving for and wanting to prepare tomorrow's workforce for that. So these grants that we're going to be talking about today, just a level set here too, is that they are going to be for the 23-24 school year. So I just want to make sure that I'll say that again here later on, but just an important note. So before we get too far though into the grant details, I would like to introduce my colleague, Sherry Worsham. She is the Director of Implementations at Project Lead the Way Launch. We're going to talk, like I said, a little bit about our programs, and then we'll talk about how you can use grant funds to help implement and expand those programs. So I'm going to hand it on over to Sherry to take it away.
Hey, Callie, thank you so much. We're all excited about this grant opportunity and about everything that Burns and McDonnell is doing to support our students and our programs. I'm happy to provide some support here, as well as other people on our PLTW team to support you as you go along this journey. I'd like to start out today by giving you a little bit of an overview of PLTW. Our pre-K-12 offerings are delivered through a unique problem-based learning approach at every grade level. Our programs bring transformative learning experiences to students and teachers. We have pathways in computer science, engineering, and biomedical science that engage students in hands-on activities, projects, and problems. And these programs will empower students to solve those real-world challenges that are so important in the classrooms, and to inspire them to reimagine themselves. So from launch at the elementary school through gateway at the middle grades into the high school courses, PLTW will help you create lasting impacts in the classroom from preschool through graduation and beyond. Now, since I work with PLTW Launch, specifically for PLTW, the organization, I'd like to tell you a little more about the Launch program. Our PLTW Launch program is for pre-K through 5th grade students, and it taps into their exploratory nature. It engages them in learning that really feels like play. It encourages them to keep discovering through activities like designing a car safety belt or building digital animation. We have 43 interdisciplinary modules that bring that learning to life in the classroom. The program empowers students to adopt a decision thinking mindset, a design thinking mindset, to attack and have some great positive experiences with some activities, projects, and problems that build upon each other and relate to the real world. As students engage in these hands-on activities, again, in computer science, engineering, and biomedical science, they become creative, collaborative problem solvers, and they're ready to take on any challenge. Now, next, I'd like to tell you about a school that has PLTW Launch in their program. And I just want to give you a little peek into this particular school. There are lots of schools across the nation that have wonderful PLTW programs, but this one was one I recently traveled to. And I love the impact that PLTW was having with their school, and also the fact that it was supported by a grant. So here's a little peek. I call this the little school that could. It's located in a small rural community, but the district for this school was actually a huge metropolitan district. So it was sort of in both worlds, right? It was part of a larger entity or system, but it was in a rural area on the outskirts of that particular district's footprint. It was part of a larger system, and they had to actually work with other schools. But in this district, this particular school had an unusual ag STEM designation from their state. And when I walked in, there were hydroponic lettuce towers growing in the entrance. And then behind the school was this huge chicken house. We had students that were so engaged already, but the specials teacher that was in charge of this program was really grappling with how to bring real world relevant lessons that could blend things like computer science and engineering and design and biomedical science and some of the other wonderful things that we supported to her students without that huge lift of having to kind of keep reinventing it every 9 weeks or every few weeks. So PLTW Launch brought this transformative learning experience to this teacher through training to help her become a facilitator, and then to the students. There were all of the modules we just reviewed that they were able to choose the best modules that fit with their school, but the first module that they chose was the one that we've gotten here in the little picture you see in the corner of the slide, which was Designs Inspired by Nature. That was part of building environmental literacy group of modules that we can work with you to develop, which one's the best fit for you. But even in the modules that build environmental literacy, all of them are going to cover those important engineering processes, those design processes. So it's just really a rich, deep, wonderful experience. And again, this was just a little peek into this school and the multiple ways that they were beginning to use PLTW Launch to support and to expand and strengthen their existing program. We hope that you'll consider that too. Now, next, I'd like to introduce you to one of my colleagues. This is Andy Sarbacher, and he's going to tell you more about the next level of PLTW.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Yeah, my name is Andy Sarbacher. I currently serve on the implementations team alongside Sherry, just as another level of support as you continue thinking through what your programs look like and what you want to, where you want to get to with your STEM programming. So as we dive into Gateway, I'll be sharing a little bit about Gateway in high school today. As we look at PLTW Gateway, there are 10 units available that help build connections to careers and real world problems. Our Gateway students imagine, discover, and practice a range of possibilities that they can look forward to in those high school programs and well beyond. We support a variety of flexible implementations. You can see the connections here to those high school pathways, but we really support your students, teachers, and schedules and we can help with developing a plan for how that implementation can look. As you look at the offerings here at middle school, there are 10 units that are around 36 to 45 hours each for each of those experiences. On this slide, you'll see just one example from design and modeling, one of our middle school units. In this case, we're highlighting how the curriculum progresses from activities to projects and then to real world problems. So this is a fantastic thread that's really woven throughout the experience, pre-K all the way through high school, where we start with well-defined activities. In this case, doing some orthographic isometric sketching, doing some measurement. Then we move into projects where students get to make meaning of what they learned during the activity stage. In this case, we're building in CAD design, maybe doing some 3D printing. In this case, for It's the Birds. In this particular project, they're designing a birdhouse for a particular species of birds. And then we move into real world problems that are much more open-ended, where they get to apply, their own creativity, their own problem solving and collaboration with their peers in designing a real world solution to a problem. So in design and modeling, the real world problem is a fantastic project where students get to design a therapeutic toy for a specific individual. They learn about their physical needs, they learn about careers like occupational therapy, and connect what they're learning in the classroom to a future opportunity. That takes us into some of the high school offerings. So with this particular grant, the engineering and computer science programs are going to be most appropriate. And so as we look at engineering specifically, this allows students to explore success through experimentation. There's 10 different courses that are all year long. Again, you have flexible implementation options of offering one all the way through all 10 of those, but we can help determine which make most sense, for your school and your building, but some fantastic opportunities for your students to dive deeper in a variety of concepts. And you can, kind of get a feel here from Engineering Essentials, which is, kind of an introductory survey type of course, 8 more specialized courses that dive deep into particular topics, whether it's architecture, manufacturing, environmental sustainability, to tie in and build on what Sherry was sharing from her elementary program that she visited. And then engineering design and development is a fantastic capstone course where students really get to bring it all together and design a real working prototype. And just to highlight on the next slide here, how this is vertically aligned. As we look pre-K all the way through 12, we can help also think vertically in your district. How are the experiences building upon one another, and how are we really providing the next steps for students to engage and develop those skills that they're looking at. So at each level, elementary, middle, and high school, we have trainings available, our PLTW core training that really immerses teachers in hands-on collaborative learning experiences that really challenge teachers to look at their classrooms in a new way, and really develop a fantastic experience for your students. So the opportunity to meet with your PLTW director, they'll be happy to walk through more details around the curriculum itself or the professional development. And then I'll just share a little bit about computer science here as we continue, but there is a 4-course sequence here in the computer science program. Again, all year long courses. 2 of these, the CSP and CSA, are also AP aligned courses that can be utilized there. But lots of topics, everything from coding, app development, simulations, cybersecurity are all alive and well in this program. So some fantastic opportunities for students to develop and enhance those real world skills of collaboration, critical thinking, ethical reasoning as they work through this curriculum. And then a quick highlight here of how the computer science sequence could look all the way from launch through the middle school, with 3 offerings of computer science for innovators, makers, automation, robotics, and app creators at the middle school level. And then those 4 high school year-long courses as well are available. With that, I will pass it back to Callie for more details on the grant itself.
All right, thanks, Andy. So we heard about our programming offerings that we offer to schools and what it could look like for schools for your students. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about how you can apply for grant funding to help make those programs possible in your school, or you can also expand if you have an existing program already. So a little bit about these grants. Again, Burns and McDonnell are making these grants possible. They and Project Lead the Way for this particular grant initiative have decided that it makes really great sense for the grants to be focused on launch, gateway, computer science, and engineering. That's also their sweet spots as well. They are also really interested in supporting schools where they have offices across the country. And as you can see, they have a number of different offices in many different states here. So schools that are public and charter schools that also serve a student population that's 40% or more eligible for free and reduced lunch is a focus for them, and are located within 25 miles of those different offices. Something to know that we use something, I always say as the crow flies, but from a point-to-point mile radius. And so if you want to or feel like it would make you feel better, I would encourage you to just Google, Burns and McDonnell in whatever location you're nearest to make sure that you're within that 25-mile range of their office. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about what these, the different award amounts and different requirements there are for each of these. This is kind of a text-heavy slide, but we also have a grant flyer, and this information is also available on our website on .org. But I will just walk you through it really quickly. So for launch, gateway, computer science, and engineering, we have grant funding available for both. If you want to add Project Lead the Way for the very first time for, let's say, launch, you're an elementary school and you don't have any launch offerings yet, those grants are available to you. These are competitive grants that you can apply to be considered for new programs for a 2-year grant. In fact, all of the new program awards are 2-year programs to really help your school get up and off the ground with a strong footing. And then for existing programs, let's say you offer a few launch modules, but you'd love to offer more within the grades you're already offering, or you want to add additional grades. You offer pre-K through 12 or pre-K through 2, and you want to add grades 3 through 5 for your launch program. That is what we would say is an expansion of an existing. And that same kind of thinking threads through for our middle school gateway program and our high school. So if you don't already offer, let's say, engineering courses at all, and you would like to add them for the first time, that would be a new program. If you offer some engineering, but you don't offer any computer science courses, and you want to add computer science, you could apply for both computer science to add that for the first time for a 2-year grant, and then also a grant to support your existing engineering program for a 1-year grant. I will also just add that for the new programs, it's a 2-year grant. So most of the thinking as you read through those requirements, you would want to add 1 module a year and then add a second module in the second year. Or for middle school, add what we call the units that Andy mentioned, and then add a second unit in that second year. Another example I want to call out, if you're an existing program and you're trying to figure out where you fit into this, if you want to train additional teachers, we would consider that expanded. If you are offering, let's say, an engineering IED, Introduction to Engineering Design course, and it's going great, and you have a lot of students that want to take the course, but you are struggling to figure out the equipment and consumables situation to add another section, is what I think about it, or another class of IED within the schedule, and the grant could help support that. That would be considered an expansion of an existing program. To talk a little bit about the allowable expenses, these are how you can use your grant funds. I'm not going to read off all of those, but It's for any Project Lead the Way related item that you might have to purchase, or our participation fee or training. And then reporting requirements, I also want to speak a little bit to our reporting requirements, because I know that if it were me, I would want to know, what do I have to be responsible for at the end of the grant, or what am I going to be doing in terms of reporting back? We require for each year of the grant period, so either if you're an existing program and were awarded, you'd have 1 year of reporting. If you were new, you'd have 2 years of reporting. You're going to have to submit an annual grant report, which is demographic kind of information, and as far as enrollment of your students, and then also 2 to 3 questions about wins of your programs, challenges that you might be facing that year, and any testimonials. And that's about the extent of that. And then the financial report is even easier. We don't require you to provide us receipts or anything like that. We just ask, really, have you used grant funds on your allowable expenses? And then also, another reporting requirement is assisting with teacher and student surveys. All right, let's do a little bit deep dive into the grant application. I have apply by day of November 18th, so I've tried to put that, we try to put it a couple places, but just keep that in mind. We'll go over that here in a moment as well. But our grant application process, what does it look like? So to apply to Project Lead the Way, our grant program, it's 1 application per school. So it's per school, per program. So again, if you're a high school, you could submit an application for computer science and then a second application for your engineering program and be considered for both grants. And then, of course, if you're an elementary program, you'd apply for launch. If you're a K through 8, that sometimes happens, you would submit an application for launch and an application for gateway, since sometimes those implementations and things that you want to do are pretty separate and different, and then you could be considered for both of those grants. So to submit your application, you will want to create a MyPLTW account if you haven't already. You'd go to mypltw.org and follow the prompts to create an account. And it's sort of like you would expect. You verify email and log back in. When you log into MyPLTW, you'll see a ribbon up at the top, and there is one icon that is specific to grants. You'll want to click that. And you'll be taken to, by default, the application section. This is somebody's portal or profile who has never submitted an application before. You'll hit the Start Application right there in the center. If you have never, or if you have a couple applications from the past, you'll see a record of your applications you've worked on, and then Start an Application will be more of your top right. You'll want to, the next screen, you'll want to look for your school. So we have this pre-populated with from a database, a national database of schools information. So you can hopefully find your school in this. So first take a stab at, see if going by state, then your city, then school name, see if your school pops up. If you can't find your school, especially if you've gone through recent consolidation, you're a newer school that's been recently built, or that's sort of gone through a renaming, a possibility as well, you might not be able to find it, in which case there's a little box underneath the school name that says my school is not listed. And then that will give you a way to, on the next screen, pre-form information about your school, school name, etc. If your school is part of a traditional public school, you would want to say yes. Does your school belong to a district? If you're a charter school that has joined us and is thinking about applying, I would say, think about, do you operate more like a traditional district, or that some sort of network oversight is pretty strong and they sign off on any new initiatives and entering into grants? You might also say yes. Otherwise, I would say probably select no. And then, of course, you'll want to select whatever program that you're interested in applying for. Just a quick rundown of some things about navigating, getting you familiar with the application itself. You can go and work on it page by page and hit save and continue in the top right, but you can also toggle back and forth between the different sections in the left-hand corner. Also, you can download an application of a PDF version of the application. It's just going to have the questions. It won't populate with your answers, but you'll get a sense for the questions that are asked on the application. My other advice is to make sure that you identify, be thoughtful about who you identify as contacts for the grant. We ask for 2 grant contacts. One is a primary grant contact, the second is a secondary contact. The primary grant contact is the person who will receive the grant agreement, and that's really the big differentiator between the primary and secondary grant contact. I would think about it as the person who is the primary grant contact. Maybe some school districts, this works out well if you could assign the person who would have the signing authority to receive that grant agreement and sign it. That works well. But if you're part of maybe a larger district where that's a little bit more complicated, then my suggestion there would be assign somebody who knows the person that should be the signer and can take lead on navigating that and redirecting it to the person who can get it signed. Let's really think about it as the primary grant contact is the person responsible for getting the grant agreement signed. And then a secondary grant contact can be really, I mean, anybody of your choosing. My recommendation typically is that you choose somebody maybe more at the building level who can then later on help answer some of the narrative questions on the grant reporting about your accomplishments of your program and any challenges, because that we're really wanting to know at the building level what's going on with your program. So those are my 2 pieces of advice there. And then in terms of the rest of the application, just to kind of go over what you might see on the different sections. We talked about contact information already. School profile is your address, enrollment figures, demographics, like total enrollment, and then enrollment by race and ethnicity, and your free and reduced lunch percentage rates as well as on that page. I would say that take a look at that and get a feel for what is going to be asked so that you can get started on that now versus later. That would be the one I would say don't wait to try and track down, because different people might have that information, and given everybody's schedules, they might need to put it on their radar earlier rather than later, and then having you being forced to scramble to get that information last minute. But Project Lead the Way at your school is sort of the bulk of the application, and this is really getting to questions about what you're planning to do to implement, your new program, or again, if you're existing, what you want to do to grow your program that next year with grant funding. And so there you can see the different questions that we're going to be asking about, who's been involved in your planning efforts, how about who your teachers are going to be, and scheduling courses. And then finally, the other questions that we ask are about your long-term vision. I would say keep it to 2 to 5 years to, what courses or modules, units, you want to add any other programs in your district or within your school, and then sustaining your program after the grant period. There is one other final page, it's additional information. It's optional to complete that. It's really, I think that is like the any last words before you submit. Do you have any other pieces of information that really just didn't seem to fit with any of our other questions that you want to make sure that Project Lead the Way is aware of? But again, it's optional, and you don't have to complete that part. But that is also the page where you hit the submit button. So then after that, just to give you another sense, like what are we looking for in an application? And so we'll talk quickly about the criteria. It really maps back to the questions we ask. So we want to, as best we can, know that your school has and your district have been really wanting to think about how you want to implement, who might be the teachers, all those sort of nuts and bolts are at least being thought about, even if you haven't ironed out every single little detail yet. And then also supportive. So when I say supportive leaders who are involved in the plan, I'm talking at the site level as well as the district level, and not have a moment where at the end of it, you might have to decline your grant. That's the worst, where you put a lot of sweat equity into something and then someone at the end of the day says that you have to decline the grant internally. That would be a bummer. So it's really about trying to get that support on the front end. And then also access, so seeking to impact as many students as possible. That says the population grant makers targeting, but it's really about as many students as possible. Impact and evaluation, really, that is really high level. Sherry's example was perfect. It's an ag designated school already at the launch or at the elementary level. How can Project Lead the Way already fit into what you're already doing, and how can that help you with your goals? And how would you decide if it was a success or not? And then sustainability, financially and organizationally sustainable after the grant period. That's really what it sounds like. You don't have to figure it out right now exactly, but you're thinking about it. And so the last thing also we'll talk about is just some application tips. Start working with your Project Lead the Way director and implementation team now versus later. The application really is meant to be a tool to help you plan. When you don't have to do this alone, I guess is what I'm trying to say with the first two tips, that the folks that presented earlier would love to talk with you about your plans for your program and what your dreams are, and how the grant how you can maximize the grant funding to make that possible. Also, being specific about your school's plans for the grant period would be really helpful for grant reviewers, because we want to know what's going on with your school. What are your needs that you have, and how does Project Lead the Way address the needs you have? And then context about, any kind of contextual details are really helpful to know. And then the last two are just tips, general grant application tips of using complete sentences, avoiding acronyms, having someone just scan it, read it through once before you submit. And I would say that the draft copy for future reference is really helpful. Maybe work on it. My other tip would be to work on this application offline in a Word document or Google Docs or something like that. And so that way you have that language that you can always recycle from other grant applications, whether that's with Project Lead the Way or maybe other grant opportunities. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Autumn Berry to help close us out.
Thanks, Callie. I get the pleasure of wrapping us up here. As Callie said, I'm Autumn Berry, our Senior Director of the Implementations team. And I'd like to just share some quick student and teacher perspective with you as you think about the impact that Project Lead the Way can have on your students with new programs and expanding any current programs. So here you can see on this slide 2 quotes from a couple of our teachers. These actually were from some schools who got started with PLTW using a partner grant like this, and the impact that they're seeing on their students. So as you read these 2 quotes, you'll notice that PLTW teachers are seeing that their students are making connections across content areas because the curriculum is so interdisciplinary and relevant to the real world. And students are getting deeper understanding of the content and their ability to problem solve at higher level thinking problems, which is really exciting for any of our students to be involved in. And then from our student perspective, here's a quick quote from one of our engineering students that said, the PLTW class has not only expanded my knowledge in the engineering field, but it's given a purpose to the other classes. It's given an application to trigonometry and algebra through projects that relate to real world problems. And my past English classes have led me into better technical writing so that I can document projects. The Project Lead the Way program has pushed me to learn beyond the school's curriculum through projects that genuinely interest me. And wouldn't we all want all of our students to be able to say those things about all their content and classes? So we hope we can help you think about how to use Project Lead the Way in this grant opportunity to bring these opportunities to your students and expand their thinking. So now we would like to share with you what the next steps would be for you to use this grant opportunity to expand your opportunities for students in your district and open it up to questions. So you'll want to schedule a one-on-one meeting with your PLTW director, and we'll make sure that they all have your contact information and are reaching out to you directly. And then you can get started immediately on creating your My PLTW account if you don't already have one, and start your grant application as Callie shared with you. So while you think about those next steps, I'd like to open it up to questions. And I'm going to kick it off with addressing a few that did come into our chat just to make sure everyone saw and heard those responses, and Callie might have some additional input on some of that. So we had a question about if a school is already offering a course like CEA, but they're planning to replace that with SIM. That's a part of our engineering program. Would that be supported with an expansion grant? Callie, would you like to add any additional information regarding that?
No, that would be a great use of grant funds.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Yes, so that's a great example of you're expanding the PLTW opportunities for your students by adding additional course, and it's allowing those students to have more opportunities that might even be more relevant to your the local needs of your area. Another question we had was related to if districts more than 25 miles from a plant are eligible for the grant.
Yeah, and I can cover this again too. I know Sandy Brinkman covered this as well, but I'm happy to kind of go over this a little bit more in detail. So the 25-mile radius is really school specific. So I know that your district office might not be within 25 miles of your of the Burns and McDonnell location, but your schools, you know, might be, right? So that's my guidance, to take a look at your schools and where they're located in your district, and then see which ones are within that 25-mile radius.
Perfect. And your PLTW director, as Sandy mentioned, will be able to help you in identifying and making sure of your eligibility. I don't see any other questions in the chat right now, but we're open to answering more questions. Feel free to come off of mute at this time or put those in the chat. And we are all here to help you think through how to use this grant opportunity to meet your needs. We're a quiet group. No more questions? Those were great questions that we had so far. All right, I'd like to point out on our closing slide here, just a reminder that your PLTW director will reach out to you, or you're welcome to reach out to them immediately as well to schedule that one-on-one meeting, and also discuss with them connecting with our implementations team to develop your plans for your program. Don't forget to start your My PLTW account if you haven't yet, and get your grant application started. You'll select grants in the My PLTW account to get that started. And if you need any additional support, we also have our PLTW Solution Center available one-on-one for high quality support, and their phone number and email is on this final slide as well. Thank you all so much for coming. We look forward to working with you and collaborating on bringing these opportunities to your students. Have a great afternoon.